Welcome back to the Relaxing Ghost channel here on YouTube. As always, your host with the most, Ghost. Today we have the Ric Flair's last match Blu-ray review. This is another one of those custom Blu-ray sets, and this features the weekend of StarCast 5 featuring Ric Flair's last match. This is a hell of a set here, guys. This features GCW, the People vs. GCW, New Japan, Music City Mayhem, all that good stuff which happened that weekend. It was a long time coming for Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, the 16-time World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. The events took place over the weekend of July 29th through July 31st, 2022, in the Nashville Fairgrounds, Nashville Municipal Auditorium. It's a very emotional weekend for many fans. 50 years for Ric Flair in the wrestling business. This is unheard of in today's era. 50 years. Ric Flair has, seen a lot through his time as a wrestler, as a performer, as a man, as a father. He has headlined pretty much every wrestling show possible, from WCW to WWE, TNA, whatever you want to call it. He's been a part of wrestling for damn near 50 years. This event was produced and promoted in parts by Conrad Thompson and David Crockett under the banner of Jim Crockett Promotions as part of the StarCast convention. And this was the first card promoted under Jim Crockett since 1988. Ric Flair headlined the event, and this was advertised as his final match. So Ric Flair debuted in 1972. Man, what a career Ric has had. He's one of my all-time favorites. Absolutely. Like I said, this is a custom wrestling set, and this is a 4-disc set. There is a ton to go through, so bear with me a few moments, and let's get right down to it. So StarCast 5. So StarCast has become the destination event for the discerning and professional wrestling fans. The home of some of the most honest, off-the-cuff conversation and moments that exciting the wrestling world. StarCast 5 is no different, and this time is part of the biggest match to date, Ric Flair's last match. On July 31st, 6:05 p.m., the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who many considered the greatest professional wrestler of all time, is set to return to the ring one final time. As part of Jim Crockett Promotions presents Ric Flair's last match wrestling event. Taking place at the world-famous Nashville Fairgrounds, the 16-time former World Heavyweight Champion will don a new custom-made robe and bring the one-of-a-kind showmanship that has made Flair a cultural icon for his over 40 years in professional wrestling business. Also featured as Starcase 5 will be The Gang That Crosses the Line, The Roast of Ric Flair, The People vs. GCW, Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. We got Chris Van Vliet, Renee Paquette, New Japan Pro Wrestling, One Last Ride with the Four Horsemen, 30 Years Later with Bret Hart, Mick Foley, Saraya Turning the Page, Click This with Kevin Nash, What's Next with Johnny Gargano, and The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Oh, there is a ton on here. Probably a good 20-hour set. As you could see, all the very cool posters down here. You know, awesome stuff. There is a actual set that Starcast has released. Just type in Ric Flair's Last Match DVD or Blu-ray, and it should pop up. I'm sure you'll just get the actual event, though. It won't include all of this stuff. Oh, just fair warning. So yeah, pretty cool cover here. You got the main event down there with Flair and Andrade versus Jarrett and Jay Lethal. You know, some of our Impact guys, MLW, John Moxley, El Desperado. Very cool. This is like the ultimate, you know, wrestling fan experience, like they mentioned. So, like I said, 4-disc set, July 29th. We had 3 events. All of this stuff pretty much, I believe, took place in Nashville, either at the fairgrounds or in the vicinity. You know, several interviews and things like that. I'm not sure where those took place, but let's get right into this. We got Black Label Pro Wrestling, The Gang Crosses the Line. Honestly, I'm not too familiar with this promotion. This event aired on Fight TV. Looks like a you know, pretty decent card. You got James Storm on there versus Brian Keith, Jake Something versus Crowbar, Big Damo versus Eric Young, Josh Alexander versus Kevin Blackwood, Konosuke Takashita versus Nick Wayne, and the BLP Championship Monsters Ball match, Calvin Tankman versus Josh Bishop, Levi Everett, and PCO. So, pretty big, pretty big card there. Again, not too familiar with some of these guys. We have the Roast of Ric Flair, which featured a hell of a lineup. This was later that evening of the 29th, featuring NHL legend Ty Domi, Tori Wilson, DDP, Eddie George, NFL Hall of Famer, Vicky Guerrero, who Fight TV listed as an AEW superstar, Brian Knobbs, Eric Bischoff, of course, Ric Flair. You got Earl Skakel, who is a comedian, Tyler Morrison, Dan St. Germain, of course, other comedians. We got Shuli Egar, Corey Ryan Forrester, and Cassio Kid. So this should be pretty epic stuff. Then we had GCW, The People versus GCW. Also took place in Nashville Fairgrounds, the 29th. That must have been later that evening or earlier in the evening. I'm sure you could look up the start time. So this looks like it started around 10 p.m. On that 29th. So it must have been following the Roast of Ric Flair. I had a really awesome idea following, you know, a lot of the stuff that, you know, they done here. It's really amazing that, you know, Conrad is able to put a lot of this together. So big thanks to Conrad Thompson, man. I know that guy Just works his butt off. So GCW, the People versus GCW. Another stacked card. This show must have ended at like 2 in the morning. Or something like this. Excuse me. Again, another pretty lengthy card for GCW. With Jon Moxley versus Blake Christian in the main event for the GCW World title. It's also featured Masha Slamovich versus Kevin Blackwood. Lamazizo versus Bussy. Ali Catch and Effie. And the Second Gear Crew, Mance Warner and Matthew Justice, in a 3-way tag team match to win, for the GCW tag titles. You also had Psycho Clown versus Joey Janela, Nick Wayne versus Alex Zane, Mike Bailey versus Tony Deppen. We also had a 6-way scramble match for the GCW Extreme Championship. So, loaded card. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of GCW. I have watched a couple of their more recent shows, but other than that, I'm, pretty much in the dark with a lot of what they do. Disc 2 here, which would be the July 30th day of the StarCast event. So Disc 2 featured the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet and Claudio Castagnoli, The Sessions with Renee Paquette and Daniel Bryan, New Japan, Music City Mayhem, and this featured Jon Moxley once again. Seemed like a shorter show here, but for me, New Japan shows always seem like they go on forever. I don't know what it is. Yeah, this featured a 6-man tag MLW National Openweight Championship match. Davey Richards defeating Rocky Romero. We had the Strong Openweight title match. Fred Rosser versus Big Damo. Hiromu Takahashi defeating Blake Christian. 6-man tag team match. United Empire versus Alex Zane and FTR. Oh, very cool. Alex Shelley versus Kushida. And Jon Moxley versus El Desperado in a no DQ match. So shout out to Jon Moxley, man. This guy worked his butt off this weekend as well. And I'm sure Conrad paid him very well. Or unless he got paid per GCW, per New Japan, and probably by Conrad as well. Jon Moxley, probably the Iron Man of the year, man. He's been everywhere. So it's New Japan's Music City Mayhem making their probably one of their first appearances in Nashville. Man, there are just so many ads and shit on all these fucking sites. Holy smokes, man. Yeah, it's hard to tell, but anyway, Music City Mayhem, probably a decent show. New Japan, not known for their production values or anything like that, but they can put a damn good show together. So after that, you got one last ride with the Four Horsemen, and 30 years later with Bret the Hitman Hart. Of course, 30 years later of, Wembley Stadium and whatnot. Pretty sure, yeah, that was around the time that this aired. And the 30th anniversary of SummerSlam 1992. Disc 3 will be the following day, July 31st. Yeah, Jim Crockett Promotions, Ric Flair's last match. So yeah, we had Foley as Pod, Saraya turning the page, and I think this was more of a giveaway that Saraya would be debuting in AEW, unless that already happened by this point. So yeah, she debuted at Grand Slam, which was towards the end of September. And Conrad, he's pretty well connected with the AEW guys and whatnot. He's pretty much an insider at this point. So if I see people on his show or him promoting them, it's pretty clear that they might be debuting on AEW or something like that. We had Click This with Kevin Nash. Awesome show, guys. If you ever have a chance, listen to Kevin Nash's podcast. What's next with Johnny Gargano? I don't think even Johnny Gargano knew what was next, but he did end up returning to WWE. The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, Ric Flair's last match pre-show, and the event. So we'll run down the event now. I did watch the event live as it happened. And I enjoyed it for the most part. The show drew about 6,800 fans for a live gate of $448,000. Second highest grossing North American independent wrestling event in modern history, behind All In. Of course, this was July 31st, 2022 at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. The buy rate was between 24 and 29,000. And for the matches itself, the pre-show, we had Ren Narita versus Yuya Uemura. We had a bunkhouse battle royal, which Mance Warner won. And I believe Mance Warner was awarded a non-title match against interim AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Why would he be awarded a non-title match? Kind of weird. With the stipulation that Warner would earn a future title shot if victorious. And Moxley defeated Warner on the August 5th edition of Rampage. Very sad. This was when all those fans were complaining, like, who's Mance Warner? And very silly. Opening up the show, we had the Motor City Machine Guns versus the Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards. Killer Cross versus Davey Boy Smith Jr. Jonathan Gresham versus Alan Angels. Takashita and Nick Wayne. Four corners match for the number one contender of the Progress World title. We had the Four Horsemen, Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson, versus the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Kerry Morton, with Robert Gibson at ringside. We had Rey Fenix versus Bandito, Laredo Kid, and Black Taurus in probably the match of the night, Fatal 4-Way. You had Josh Alexander versus Jacob Fatu for the Impact World title. The Briscoes versus the Von Erichs in a hell of a match. Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo and Rachel Ellering in a triple threat for the Knockouts Championship. And then Ric Flair and Andrade versus Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. 27 minutes going in the main event. Ric Flair went out in style that night. This was a really fun event. I did feel uncomfortable at times watching Ric Flair, but I knew Ric Flair's heart and his passion was, second to none. It's hard for a man who's been doing this for 50 years to, you know, lose his passion and whatnot. So I gotta give it to Ric Flair at 70 plus years old, going in there and, putting on a show one last time. So the match did get mixed reviews, like I said, the match did get mixed reviews, and the event got mixed reviews. Meltzer did not rate the Ric Flair tag team match, but the best match of the show was the Fatal 4-Way match with Ray Phoenix, getting 4.5 stars. Overall a pretty well received event. On disc 4, there's a lot of bonus stuff. We got Ric Flair versus Jeff Jarrett for the U.S. title and for the WCW title. We have Ric Flair's Hall of Fame stuff from 2008. Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. Ric Flair saying goodbye. Jay Lethal's tribute to Flair. We have Jay Lethal versus Ric Flair in the Woo-Off. We have some of Flair's wildest interviews, the final farewell, the last match press conference, last match episodes 1 and 2. Flair responds to Jarrett's attack, the JCP Control Center. Ric Flair's last match episode 3, Chris Van Vliet, Ric Flair interview. Jeff Jarrett is a great value for Ric Flair. Starrcast 5 media scrum. We have Bret Hart, Mark Calloway, and Mick Foley arriving ringside. We have fan cam reels, Who'd Play You in a Movie, and Vloghausen from Starrcast. So this was a hell of a Blu-ray to get through today. 4 discs, with, 3 or 4 different events throughout the weekend. Ric Flair's final match, rumored, not confirmed, but man, this was a hell of a weekend. It was a fun time to be a fan on this weekend. Jon Moxley proving why he is one of the hottest stars in the business today. Shout out to all the guys from Impact that were a part of this weekend. Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett, Andrade. I'm happy that Andrade got some of the spotlight in this. The official last match Blu-ray on Starrcast website is $48 Canadian, and I'm pretty sure that's just the list, the event itself. So that's kind of steep for a Blu-ray, and I'm not sure if that includes shipping or what, but yeah, that is kind of steep. So they got to make their money somehow, but man, that's $48 Canadian. Very steep. So anyways, let me know your thoughts on the Ric Flair's last match event and weekend. As always, we'll talk to you later. Peace.